That crumpled photograph in my purse contained evidence that would destroy my brother's marriage before the ink dried on their wedding certificate. In that single image, I discovered my new sister-in-law wasn't the faithful bride she pretended to be. She was someone who had been living a double life that would shatter my brother's heart into a million pieces. The worst part? The photo wasn't meant for me to find. Someone had deliberately placed it in my purse during the reception, knowing I would be the one person torn between protecting my brother and exposing the woman he'd just vowed to love forever. As I stared at the damning evidence in my trembling hands, surrounded by the laughter and celebration of what should have been the happiest day of my brother's life, I realized I was holding a grenade that would explode our entire family. But here's what I didn't know yet. Discovering that photo was just the beginning of a nightmare that would force me to choose between my loyalty to my brother and protecting him from a truth that might destroy him. 3 months earlier, I was living what I thought was a perfectly normal life. My brother Marcus had been dating Elena for 2 years, and honestly, I'd never seen him happier. They seemed like the perfect couple. She was beautiful, charming, and had this way of making everyone in the room feel like they were the most important person there. Elena had integrated seamlessly into our family. She came to every barbecue, remembered everyone's birthdays, and even helped our mom with Christmas dinner last year. My parents adored her. "She's the daughter I never had," Mom would say, which used to make me roll my eyes playfully. The engagement had been a fairy tale. Marcus proposed during a sunset picnic at the lake where they'd had their first date. Elena cried, those perfect, delicate tears that somehow made her look even more beautiful. The whole family was there, hidden behind trees with cameras ready. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, she told us later. Wedding planning had been intense but joyful. Elena had specific ideas about everything: the flowers, the venue, the dress. She was organized to the point of being controlling, but we all figured that was just wedding stress. Marcus seemed happy to let her take the lead. "Whatever makes her happy," he'd say, with that dopey grin he got whenever he talked about her. I was the maid of honor, naturally. Elena and I had grown close over the months of planning. We'd spent hours together picking out decorations, tasting cakes, addressing invitations. She'd confide in me about little anxieties. Would her dress fit right? Would the weather cooperate? Would Marcus's college friends behave themselves? Looking back now, I realize there were small things that seemed off. Elena was secretive about her phone, always flipping it face down when it buzzed. She'd occasionally get calls that would make her step outside, claiming it was work stuff. But honestly, who doesn't have work drama? I never thought twice about it. The wedding ceremony had been absolutely perfect. Elena looked stunning in her flowing white dress, and Marcus couldn't stop grinning. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. Elena's voice shook with emotion as she promised to love Marcus through every storm, every joy, every challenge life brings us. The reception was in full swing. The band was playing, people were dancing, and the champagne was flowing freely. I was exhausted from my maid of honor duties, but happy. My brother had found his person, and our family felt complete. I needed to touch up my lipstick, so I grabbed my purse from under the head table. That's when I felt it. Something that shouldn't have been there. A folded piece of paper, crumpled and rough against my fingers. I almost threw it away without looking, assuming it was trash that had somehow gotten mixed in with my things. But something made me pause. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was curiosity, but I unfolded the paper carefully. It wasn't paper at all. It was a photograph. The image hit me like a physical blow. Elena, unmistakably Elena, in the arms of another man. Not just talking to him, not just standing near him, kissing him passionately, her hands tangled in his hair, his arms wrapped around her waist. The timestamp in the corner showed it was taken just 3 weeks ago. My heart started racing so hard I could hear it over the music. My hands were shaking as I looked closer at the image. The man wasn't anyone I recognized, but Elena's face was crystal clear. This wasn't some old photo from before she met Marcus. This was recent. This was during their engagement. This was betrayal in its purest form. I looked around the reception frantically, trying to process what I was seeing. There was Elena, radiant in her wedding dress, dancing with her new husband, my brother, while guests cheered and took photos. The same woman who, just weeks ago, had been in another man's arms. My stomach dropped as the implications crashed over me. Someone had put this photo in my purse deliberately. Someone wanted me to know. But who? And more importantly, what was I supposed to do with this information on what should have been the happiest day of my brother's life? To understand why finding that photo felt like a knife to the heart, you need to know about Marcus and me. We're only 18 months apart, and we've been each other's closest friends since childhood. When our parents went through their messy divorce when I was 12, Marcus and I clung to each other through the chaos. Marcus had always been the hopeful romantic in our family, while I was cynical about love after watching our parents tear each other apart. Marcus never lost faith that he'd find his person. He'd been in a few serious relationships before Elena, and each breakup destroyed him. He loved with his whole heart, which made him vulnerable to getting it shattered. His relationship before Elena had been particularly brutal. Sarah had cheated on him with his best friend, and the betrayal had left Marcus in pieces for almost a year. I'd spent countless nights on the phone with him, listening to him question everything about himself. "Maybe I'm just not enough," he'd say, and it broke my heart every time. When Elena came into his life, it was like watching Marcus come back to life. She seemed to heal all those old wounds. She made him laugh again, made him believe in love again. Watching them together, seeing how she looked at him like he hung the moon, it had restored my faith in love too. Elena had shared her own story of heartbreak with us. She'd been engaged before, to someone who had left her at the altar. She'd cried telling us about it, about how devastated she'd been, how Marcus had helped her trust again. "He saved me," she'd whispered to me one night over wine. "I never thought I could love someone the way I love your brother." That's what made the photo so devastating. It wasn't just infidelity. It was history repeating itself in the cruelest way possible. My brother, who had barely survived being cheated on before, had unknowingly married someone who was doing the exact same thing to him. The timing made it worse. 3 weeks before the wedding would have been right after the bachelor and bachelorette parties. While Marcus was probably writing his vows and dreaming about their future together, Elena was in another man's arms. I thought about all the conversations we'd had during wedding planning, all the times Elena had talked about wanting to be the best wife to Marcus, about how much she loved him. Had any of it been real? Or had she been playing a role this entire time, manipulating not just my brother but our entire family? I couldn't focus on the celebration after finding that photo. I smiled and made small talk, but my mind was racing. I kept looking around the reception, trying to figure out who might have put the photo in my purse. It had to be someone who knew about Elena's affair and wanted me to expose it. During the bouquet toss, I noticed Elena's college roommate, Jessica, watching me with strange intensity. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. Later, when I was getting more champagne, Jessica approached me. "Can we talk privately?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. We stepped outside onto the venue's patio. Jessica was wringing her hands, clearly struggling with something. "I saw you found the photo," she said quietly. My blood ran cold. So it had been her. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do this? Why today?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to stop this. Elena's been seeing David for 8 months. She's not going to end it after the wedding. She thinks she can have both of them." 8 months. My knees nearly buckled. This wasn't some moment of weakness or last-minute panic. This was a sustained deception that had been going on through the entire engagement. Jessica told me everything she knew. David was Elena's co-worker, recently divorced, with 2 young kids. Elena had been telling him that she was going to call off the wedding, that she just needed time to figure out how to break it to Marcus gently. But Jessica had overheard Elena on the phone with him just last week, making plans for after the honeymoon. "She's going to string them both along," Jessica said, sobbing now. "She thinks she's smart enough to manage 2 relationships. She told David that Marcus is financially stable and good husband material, but that David is her real love." I felt sick. This wasn't just about an affair. Elena was treating my brother like a financial security blanket while pursuing her actual relationship with someone else. The calculation of it, the coldness, made it so much worse than a simple case of cheating. Jessica begged me to confront Elena before they left for their honeymoon the next day. "He deserves to know before they're legally married," she pleaded. But I was frozen with indecision. The reception was still going on. My brother was inside, dancing with his new wife, surrounded by family and friends celebrating their love. I went back inside and watched Elena more carefully. Now that I knew what to look for, I saw things differently. The way she kept checking her phone, even during their first dance. How she seemed distracted during the toasts, like her mind was somewhere else. When Marcus grabbed her hand and spun her around, her smile looked forced. The worst moment was during the father-daughter dance. Elena was dancing with her dad, both of them crying happy tears, while he whispered what I assumed were words of love and pride. Knowing what I knew, watching this performance of innocence and joy felt like torture. As the evening wound down, I realized I was running out of time to make a decision. The newlyweds were leaving early the next morning for their honeymoon in Greece, 2 weeks that Marcus had been planning and saving for months. Once they were gone, it would be even harder to address this situation. I kept the photo hidden in my purse, but it felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. Every time I looked at my brother's happy face, I felt like I was complicit in the deception. But every time I imagined destroying that happiness, I felt like a monster. Around midnight, as guests were starting to leave, Elena pulled me aside for what she said would be our last conversation before the honeymoon. She hugged me tight and thanked me for being such an amazing sister-in-law. "I'm so lucky to be part of this family," she said, tears in her eyes. Standing there, listening to her lies while knowing the truth, I realized I couldn't let this charade continue. I waited until the reception was nearly over and most of the guests had left. Elena was in the bridal suite, changing out of her wedding dress while Marcus was outside saying goodbye to his college friends. It was now or never. I knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. Elena looked up, surprised but still glowing from the celebration. "Oh, hey, I was just about to come find you to say one more goodbye before—" I pulled out the photograph and placed it on the dresser in front of her. The color drained from her face instantly. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Elena stared at the photo for a long moment, and I watched her calculate her response. I half expected her to deny it, to claim it was photoshopped or taken out of context. Instead, she sank onto the edge of the bed and put her head in her hands. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "I just found out tonight. Your friend Jessica put this in my purse. She told me about David, about the 8 months, about your plans to continue seeing him after the wedding." Elena's head snapped up, anger flashing in her eyes. "Jessica had no right." "Neither do you," I interrupted, my composure finally cracking. "You have no right to do this to Marcus. Do you have any idea what this will do to him? He's already been through this before, and it nearly destroyed him." Elena stood up, and for a moment, I saw a side of her I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating. The mask was finally off. "You don't understand," she said. "It's not that simple. Marcus is a good man, and he'll be a good husband. He's stable. He's kind. He wants the same things I want. A house, kids, a quiet life. But David is different. He makes me feel alive in a way that Marcus never could." I stared at her in disbelief. "So you thought you could have both? You were planning to keep Marcus as your husband while having an affair with David?" "People do it all the time," she said defensively. "Marcus would never have to know. I love him, just not in the same way I love David. Why should I have to choose between security and passion?" Her casual cruelty took my breath away. This woman I'd thought I knew, who I'd welcomed into our family, was talking about my brother like he was a convenience rather than a human being with feelings. "Because he deserves better than that," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "He deserves someone who chooses him completely, not someone who sees him as a safety net while she gets her thrills elsewhere." Elena's expression hardened. "And what exactly do you plan to do with this information? Ruin his wedding night? Destroy his happiness based on one photo that proves nothing?" "It proves everything," I shot back. "It proves that you're not the woman he thinks he married. It proves that everything about this wedding was a lie." We stared at each other for a long moment. I could see her trying to decide whether to continue lying, to beg for my silence, or to double down on her justifications. "Please," she finally said, and her voice broke. "Please, don't tell him. Not tonight. Let him have this happiness. At least for a little while. I'll figure out how to end things with David after the honeymoon. I promise." But I could see in her eyes that she was lying even now. There was no remorse, no real intention to change. She was just trying to buy time, to figure out how to manage the situation to her advantage. "I'm telling him," I said quietly. "Maybe not tonight, but I'm telling him. He has a right to know who he really married." Elena's face twisted with rage and desperation. "If you do this, you'll destroy him, and you'll destroy me too. Is that really what you want? To blow up everyone's life over something that doesn't even concern you?" I left Elena in that bridal suite and found Marcus outside, still saying goodbye to friends. Seeing him so happy, so completely oblivious to what I'd just discovered, made my chest tight with grief. I wasn't just carrying the burden of Elena's betrayal, I was carrying the knowledge that I was about to destroy my brother's world. I couldn't do it that night. Call it cowardice, call it compassion, but I couldn't bring myself to shatter his wedding day completely. Instead, I told him I needed to talk to him the next day, before he left for the honeymoon. "Is everything okay?" he asked, suddenly concerned. "You look upset." "Just wedding emotions," I lied, "but we really do need to talk tomorrow. It's important." That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept going over the conversation with Elena, wondering if there was any possibility I'd misunderstood, if there was some explanation that would make this all go away. But every time I looked at that photo, the reality hit me again. The next morning, I met Marcus at his apartment. He was packing for the honeymoon, practically bouncing with excitement. Elena had already left to get some last-minute things, which gave us privacy for what I knew would be the most difficult conversation of our lives. When I showed him the photo, his reaction was exactly what I'd feared. First, confusion, then denial, then a pain so raw and deep that I could physically see it break him. "This can't be real," he whispered, staring at the image. "She wouldn't. We just got married yesterday. She loves me." I had to tell him everything Jessica had shared with me, the 8 months of deception, Elena's plan to continue the affair after the wedding, her cold calculation about keeping him for security while pursuing David for passion. Marcus listened in complete silence, and I watched him age years in the span of our conversation. When I finished, he sat on his couch for a long time, just staring at the photo. She told me I saved her, he finally said, his voice hollow. She said I helped her believe in love again after her ex left her at the altar. Maybe that part was true, I offered weakly. No, he said firmly. None of it was true. The person I married doesn't exist. Elena returned while we were still talking. Moment she saw us together with the photo between us, she knew. Her shoulders sagged in defeat, but even then she tried to minimize and manipulate. The confrontation between them was brutal. Elena cried, begged, promised to change, blamed David for seducing her, blamed Jessica for betraying her, even blamed me for interfering in something that wasn't my business. But Marcus had shut down emotionally. He just listened to her lies and excuses with dead eyes. In the end, Marcus asked her to leave. She tried to argue, to negotiate, to buy more time, but he was done. Get out, he said quietly. Take your things and get out of my apartment. I never want to see you again. The next few days were a nightmare of canceled honeymoon plans, returned wedding gifts, and difficult phone calls to family and friends. Some people blamed me for ruining the marriage. Others thanked me for having the courage to speak up. Our parents were devastated but supportive of both Marcus and my decision to tell him. Marcus spent the week he was supposed to be honeymooning in Greece, holed up in his apartment, barely eating, barely speaking. I stayed with him most of that time, and we grieved together, not just for his marriage, but for the Elena we thought we'd known and loved. 6 months later, Marcus is doing better. It took him a long time to work through the betrayal, and he's been in therapy to process not just Elena's deception but the pattern of being attracted to people who ultimately hurt him. He's not dating yet, but he's started to believe again that not everyone will betray his trust. We found out later that Elena and David broke up just 2 weeks after the wedding fell apart. Apparently, once she wasn't the forbidden fruit anymore, he lost interest. She tried to reach out to Marcus several times, but he never responded. As far as I know, she moved to another city and started over somewhere else. The experience changed me too. I learned that sometimes love means being willing to hurt someone in order to protect them from something worse. If I hadn't found that photo, Marcus might have spent years in a marriage built on lies, never understanding why he felt like something was missing. I also learned that trusting my instincts matters. Those small red flags I'd noticed but dismissed. Elena's secretiveness, her mysterious phone calls, her occasional emotional distance, they had been real warning signs. I won't ignore those subtle signals again. Most importantly, I learned that family means protecting each other, even when it's hard. Even when it means being the bearer of devastating news. Even when it means some people will blame you for speaking the truth instead of blaming the person who created the lie. Marcus and I are closer now than we've ever been. Going through this crisis together strengthened our bond and reminded us that we'll always have each other's backs, no matter what. He told me recently that while he's grateful, I told him the truth. He's most grateful that I was brave enough to risk our relationship to protect him. Looking back, I don't regret my choice to expose Elena's deception. It was devastating in the short term, but it saved Marcus from years of living a lie. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let someone you care about be fooled by someone who doesn't deserve them. So here's my question for you. Did I do the right thing by exposing Elena's affair, or should I have stayed out of my brother's marriage? Some people have told me I was wrong to interfere, that Marcus had the right to figure out his own marriage problems. Others have said I was a hero for protecting my brother from a woman who was using him. I still wrestle with the timing. Should I have told him before the wedding? On the wedding night? Was waiting until the next morning the right choice? Or was it cowardly? What would you have done in my situation? If you found evidence that your sibling's new spouse was cheating, would you speak up or stay silent? And if you did decide to tell them, How would you handle the timing and approach? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on this impossible situation and whether you think family loyalty means protecting someone from the truth or ensuring they know the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Thank you for reading my story. Sometimes the hardest decisions we make are the ones made out of love.